What's up, guys? We are back with another Mythic Legions review, and it is a bit of a doozy because we are jumping right into, well, the wave to end all waves right now, and possibly the beginning and the end of my top 10 list for 2025, because we are finally going to take a look at the NECRONOMINUS wave. And of course, because of just what it is, I have to take a look at the big man himself. We're going to take a look at NECRONOMINUS, but we're also going to take a look at his horse. So we're going to do Conabus as well. Now, this, of course, is a wave that went up for pre-order, what, over 2 years ago at Legions Con 2022. My first Legions Con is when this went up, and yeah, it's been a bit of a journey, a bit of a road to get here. But I am so excited to finally get my hands on this guy, right? So we've got him here in deluxe style packaging for NECRONOMINUS himself. He's in the window. This seems a little bit different. Like, there's no tab on the top this time around. I believe that's the norm. So you've got him there in the big window, and then the back has that fully realized print from Nate Barch with all of the Dark Four. You've got a little bit of a write-up down there. Of course, we've got a bio on one side. You've got some product shots of cross-sell figures from the NECRONOMINUS wave. So fairly standard stuff for the line, but of course, you know, that beautiful new Nate artwork right there. And then for Conabus, he comes in, you know, a standard horse-size box. So you've got him there in the big window. We've got this humongous, you know, spread of artwork that showcases both horses on this box. You've got a bio, you've got faction emblems, and then the back also gives you that fully realized piece of artwork of all of the Dark Four in their glory. So yeah, let's do it. Let's pull them out and take a look. And here we go, out of the package, our Mythic Legions NECRONOMINUS. So this is the big bad, the final member of the Dark Four, Skeleton God, and a figure that went up for pre-order just a really long time ago. It's been over 2 years at this point, so there's just about as much anticipation around this guy as I think possible when it comes to an action figure. So I'm really excited to take a look at this one. So let's get started, see what he can do. Now, for the purposes of doing this and showing you how he moves, I took the soft goods off. Not that they get in the way, but they're just going to obstruct you being able to see half of the figure. So I took the soft goods off, but of course left the wings on since they do have articulation as well. As far as moving him around, the head really can't look up. I'm sure you can understand why. The headdress is a form over function kind of thing for sure. He looks down. You've got some tilt side to side. You've got rotation. Arms are everything you would expect on a 1.0. Think Skeleton Legion Builder 2. So that guy. Swivel. You've got your single jointed swiveling elbow. Swivel at the gauntlet. Swivel at the wrist. Hinge as well. The torso is not the torso that's on the Skeleton Legion Builder. If you thought that's what it was, he actually has sculpted parts down here, some sort of armor inside of his like cavity right there. But he has really, really good range forward and backward. You've got some tilt side to side, and that's of course your swivel. The rest of this guy is pretty standard skeleton. So legs go out. They kick forward. They're going to kick backwards. You don't have a thigh twist up there. We've got swiveling knees, though. So you've got that, as usual on a skeleton. They're that ratcheted knee joint also. And then you've got swivel, you've got hinges, and rotation, all that good stuff at the ankle. One thing I will point out with this guy is that you actually have to put the feet on him. He comes without feet in the box because of how big his noggin is there. So you actually have to put him together. Not that that's difficult, but it was kind of funny. As far as the wings go, these are pretty interesting. They are very different from what we've had before. So the point that actually connects in, these are a skeleton arm, basically. They go in the back, and then they swivel. So they swivel and hinge. You've got swivel and hinge at this point, and you've got, well, these pieces come out. I'm going to leave that out for a second. You've got swivel, and you've got hinges at this top point as well. What I will point out, and maybe the one area that is kind of confusing or maybe slightly worrisome to me, is that this piece here, this middle section of the wing, of the arm, so to speak, is really gummy compared to the rest of the structure. So I'm concerned somewhat about like droopage over time, but right now it's holding just fine. It's not sounding the alarm or anything, just something to point out, especially when I heated them up to get everything kind of loose and just make sure everything was moving. This thing was super, super gummy compared to everything else. So it definitely felt a lot different. Beyond that, I think he moves really well. I mean, he's very much a standard figure. There's not anything too crazy or different outside of the fact that there's some new range on this, you know, compared to original skeletons. But overall, He's still a very standard 1.0 style figure, just happens to have some very articulated wings attached to his back. Now, all that said, of course, the main area of focus for me and for a lot of folks when it comes to Legions is not articulation, it's the visuals. And this figure in particular is absolutely that. He is all about the aesthetic and what Eric Treadaway's vision was for this character, because he is so unique and so ornate and so different from everything else. As we've gone from, Erethyr to Alithia to Poxus and now Necronominus, they've gotten more and more ornate as we've gone on, or more detailed to say. So Erethyr is still a very basic figure by comparison to Necronominus. There's so much going on with this guy. He is in some ways very similar to like the Skeleton Legion Builder 2 that we got not too long ago in terms of how it feels and the chunkiness of those bones, and specifically like the rib cage. But this guy is very much his own thing too, by virtue of some of these very unique, and I'm assuming, parts that we're probably not going to see elsewhere, if at all, or maybe for a while at this point. We've got things like this bone collar that sits around his neck that takes the place of pauldrons on this figure. So it actually is a removable piece that plugs into the pauldron holes, and these are a mechanism for also how the cape is held on. And what we'll do here in a bit is I'll actually take the cape off so you can see how it attaches. It's not difficult to figure out, but it may not necessarily be an obvious thing when you're, getting him out of the box for the first time. But speaking of the soft goods, I really like these. All of these little spindly pieces are a separate piece that are different from the actual black cape, and these are all wired as well. And they've got this sort of, royal look to them. There's a different pattern on the inside of these soft goods. It's a red and black versus just a tattered black on the backside of it. It's of course all wired. Think of similar to like the Vorgus Vermilius 2 cape in terms of like having like tendrils kind of going out. Not as many though, but very similar to that. He's got things, of course, like the headdress. This head is obviously going to be unique to him. We've got some soft goods down here, more like tattered kind of tabard type of pieces. But these are all wired as usual. And of course, they're like a royal purple. He's got unique looking greaves down here which have like ravens on them, and they have intense tiny detail in there with a little bit of like bejeweling on the sides. As I mentioned, you have to put his feet on. They're bare feet, so we don't get boots for him or anything. You've got skeletal feet here. He's got matching wrist gauntlets that go with the greaves. He's got this, skeletal belt and everything that sits down there, and everything with this guy is covered in bones. He's got bones that wrap around his belt. He's got these little bone, I don't know what you would call these, but these things that are covered in tiny little bones. Take the back of his collar, for example, has what I believe are supposed to be like 3 of the children. So, Malleus and Brother Mandibulus and Morgulith. That's what I think anyway. I'm probably wrong. But then you've got basically like this, it almost looks like a pipe organ in many ways, that collar that sits around his neck, which is nothing but, a bunch of bones as well. He looks terrifying. Basically, this figure is covered in detail from top to bottom. Every inch of this figure has some sort of tiny intricate detail or some sort of paint application to make it pop, make it stand out. And it's definitely a progression of the line in terms of what we're seeing with figures that are just standard figures now, but specifically a progression, like I said, from Erethyr to now. Erethyr, we'll just bring him up right now just to show the comparison here. And there really is no comparison at this point. They don't really have anything to do with each other outside of the fact that they are related by being the Dark Four. But this thing is a very basic figure by comparison. I still love this guy, don't get me wrong, but this is just so much different. And this also, I guess, can give you an idea of height. Necronominus is not that big. He's only tall because he has the headdress, and he's big because of the wings. Otherwise, he's still basically just a standard figure, maybe slightly taller than average, but he's nothing huge or anything like that. So I'm really happy with him. I think the design in general is something very unique. There's something very tribal about this particular look, kind of shamanistic almost to me, with a lot of the bones and everything like that. But it's the colors also, these different hues of purple, the slight purple that's in the armor. That's not just silver. There's something in there that I can't really place, but it has a tinge to it. and then all of this gold ornate bone work all over him. That's just tremendous. Of course, a lot of that is going to be up in this headdress, which is insane in person. It is ridiculous in size and scope and shape. He's got, feathers, wings that go running throughout. He's got like a horse jawbone that hangs down as protection for the face. And then you've got this sort of headdress of bones that sits with a crown in front with that jewel up there. And it's pretty interesting. It's hard to get a video of, but there is skull damage underneath that. If you pry it up just a little bit, there is sculpted skull damage in there, like he got lobotomized or something like that. Pretty interesting. The one thing, and I might talk about this later when we get to accessories as well, the one thing I kind of wish was different about all this, I wish there was a faceplate that I could swap in there, or a movable jaw, something like that. I'd love to be able to give him a slightly different expression rather than just having his mouth shut all the time. Not the hugest thing, but something to think about. Otherwise, I mean, I think he's absolutely just terrific, pretty much from top to bottom. And let's go ahead and take the soft goods off. So what these are, these come out, and these peg into these holes on the front of his collar, the pauldron replacements for Necronominus. So you take this gold nub on the back of this, you thread it through the hole in the outer piece, which is this red spindly piece, and then there are loops on the cape, and you just pop that in there, and then you can pop this back in. It actually works fairly simply. It is a lot to peg in there, but once you kind of do it, you'll figure it out fairly quickly, and it'll just go right in. And it does stay, the peg is actually super long, so there's extra space on the peg to account for all that stuff too, which is pretty neat. But let's take that off entirely, and then you can see the back of the figure also, and it gives you a little bit more view of some of like the waist armor, things like that. And then you get a little bit more of the craziness going on here with this collar. Of course, we do have to talk about the wings a bit. I mean, there's not much more to say beyond what they do when it comes to articulation, but they do work really well. They are, of course, this newer style bone color, but they're also very big and they're very looming. They look much more menacing than the original ones, I think. The only concern I have on these are these pieces, because they do pop out like that. They're keyed also. I believe they're probably like this because of packaging reasons, to make sure that he can fit in that deluxe style package without the wings being fully assembled. So you've got this one and the other one. They can't fit in the opposites, so you won't get them mixed up as long as you don't force them. But I'm just, one more piece to pop off. This one in particular, on mine, it likes to pop out quite easily. I suppose if you're never going to take them out, you could just glue them in place and you're good to go. So maybe a non-issue, but, ultimately, this guy is absolutely fantastic. Easily my favorite looking figure of the Dark Four, no doubt about it. And up until now, until I dig further into this wave anyway, easily the most ornate Legions figure I can think I've seen in quite some time. Now, as far as accessories goes, Necronominus is, well, he's interesting. And I only say that because depending on your point of view, you're either going to view him as being like super stacked with a lot of cool stuff, or he's going to be fairly, no pun intended, bare bones, because ultimately he really doesn't have a lot of stuff, but he also does at the same time. So he's got, he's obviously got the crazy soft goods, but that's not really an accessory. It can be, but it's on him. He's got the neck piece, but that's not really an accessory. It's on him. It takes the place of pauldrons for this figure, but it's not really an accessory in that way. The bone wings, obviously I took them off right now. Those are a big thing also. Are they an accessory or are they an integral part of the figure? Your mileage may vary, of course. He doesn't come with anything else, though, outside of his weapon and some hands. So he is a little bit different, especially when you see other figures who have like 15 different things in their box. It's just, your mileage may vary, point of view kind of a thing. I do think, however, that if you do happen to think he doesn't come with enough, when you see this scythe in hand, you'll pretty much, change your tune, because it may be the coolest accessory we've ever gotten, if not one of the most ridiculous also. So he does come with some hands to start with, just because he's got to have something, right? He does have a set of gripping hands on him in the box. You get a set of vertically hinged gripping hands as well. So 2 sets of gripping hands. And then you also get some style posy, gesturing, evil, menacing style hands. So he does have some hands, but then he's also got this monster scythe. And this is one of the most ridiculous things, I think, in the entire line, but in a good way. It's very much one of the things that the Dark Four are very much known for in this line, where there's like their heads and faces are all over stuff that they either wear or stuff that people wear under them. So this is the God Razor, and it's it's so ridiculous because it's him holding a scythe adorned on the scythe, which is just absurd, but it's so cool. So there's a lot of Necronominus in here. It's a mini Necronominus with the scythe in his hands, but it's also got his wings coming out that are the frame for the blade itself, which, you know, I guess, is it dumb? Is it cool? I don't know, but I think it's awesome. The spine and pelvis are in there, so it's literally a little mini skeletal, like golden bronze Necronominus that is the frame and the structure of this weapon, which is crazy, but it's really cool at the same time. So it makes up for any shortcomings that may or may not exist in this figure for me, because this is just absurd. When I saw this in person at Legions Con, it was just a what are they doing kind of moment. This is too cool for me. I couldn't get enough of it. It was just ridiculous in the best possible way. But I think this is awesome, and it's one of those things. You know, it's kind of like something like a scare glow kind of a weapon. It's a very imposing, very menacing style thing that absolutely a big skeletal god should have. This should be his style of weapon, and I think they absolutely killed it. The only thing that I truly wish was different about this figure when it comes to accessories, you know, whether you think he has a lot or not enough, is I wish there was a different faceplate or something for him, just so I could have a different expression. Because while I really love everything, like I said, I love everything about the head and the headdress and everything, I would have liked to have been able to get just a little bit different expression in there. But otherwise, not taking anything away from this amazing figure, he does not exactly have a lot of stuff, depending on your point of view, but what he does have, especially, you know, in the confines of the wings and all the soft goods and all that stuff, he is very well loaded. It's just not, some of it is not your quote-unquote traditional accessories. But this guy, absolutely nuts, very cool, can't get enough of it. Would love to see more stuff like that, as just ridiculous as it is. And then here we are with a whole different thing. So this is Conabus, Necronominus' horse. Obviously, he's a skeleton, and that makes him a very different kind of thing. Now, obviously, he's different from a regular figure. He's different from Necronominus, but he's also different from all the other horses. Not in the sense that, like, they're necessarily built all that differently. It's just they're a different kind of thing. Those are horses with meat all over their bodies. This is a horse with some decaying, rotted flesh and mostly bones. So he is different, but he's surprisingly very similar to the other horses. Now, that said, he is still a little bit, I don't know, maybe like fragile. Fragile's not really the word. Maybe not as easy to handle, because a lot of stuff isn't necessarily on him. It's sitting over top of him, but he's not as robust as the other horses, you know, say Aethon or Philogeus or whatever you want to have as your example. So some of this stuff is just sort of on him, which does make a lot of sense. So essentially all of it can come off as well. If you want to have him more nude, so to speak, you can do that. He does have essentially all of the same articulation, though, which I'm fairly surprised at. I guess I shouldn't be, but I'm fairly surprised at just what he can do with how they were able to make this work. He's very similar to the horses. So if you got any of the other ones, you basically know what to expect. So you've got a head and neck that work really, really well. I mean, he can go all the way down, go up. Look at that tilt side to side. You've got swivel there also. I'm going to take this piece off. It's probably going to come off anyway. Helps me moving him around. Head and up and down, tilt side to side, all that good stuff. So you've got a lot of range there. You've got an articulating, hinge, swiveling tail there. And then for the legs, they hinge in and out. These are all fairly tight, which I have heated him up. So it's not necessarily a sense that he is tight in a bad way. This guy needs to be tight. The horses should be tighter, I think, than anything else, just because of how much they have to support. So you've got your sort of knee articulation, and then you've got ankle articulation, and then you've got the back legs, which are a little bit different. So they swivel, and they also hinge in and out slightly. These legs are also not the same. So like this one has I guess this is flesh, right? And it is rotting and sort of all over him, but it stops this leg from going any further than that. So this one can only go that far. The other leg back here can kick more forward, and then you've got your knees. They swivel, and then you've got ankle. I still don't exactly know how horses are set up. That sounds like a weird thing to say. I don't know how horses are built, but I'm not the one designing figures, so it doesn't really matter. We've got a pretty nicely articulated horse, though. You know, he doesn't really have anything else at the torso, so like there's nothing here. You can see it sort of flexes, but it's not actually moving. That's where pieces pop together. You've got like the saddle parts and all the armor. So like here's what I'm talking about. It'll come off. If you want to have like some exposed nasty flesh there, you've got the options for that. But there's just so much detail in this guy too. And of course the saddle will come off, the bridle will come off, the harness up here. I don't know everything about horse terminology, so don't quote me on all of this stuff. But you can get him to be a more complete skeletal horse rather than being one that is, you know, kind of, I don't know, beautied up a bit for the Dark Lord himself. So if you want something for just a regular skeleton, take all this stuff off and put one of your skeleton Legion builders on him. You're good to go for a regular skeletal horse. I think he looks terrific. I'm really, really happy with this. Articulation on these is not something I truly worry about too much. I don't think it really matters because at the end of the day, I like that they can move. I like what they can do. I like the fact that they're robust enough to have some movement, some dynamic posing, but I need them to be sturdy. I need this thing to be able to stand on a shelf, you know, probably until the day I die with Necronominus on him. And so far, he's doing really, really well. I'm very, very happy with this guy. I think he stands perfectly, looks really good, and there's just an insane amount of detail in this. It is truly tremendous what they're able to do, and a testament, like damn near everything else, to Eric Treadway's sculpting ability and his artistic vision and whatever other buzzword you want to throw in there. The man is just amazing at what he does. Simply put, right? We do have a couple accessories with Conabus. Nothing too crazy. You've got shields, like we've seen with the other horses. You've got shields. And what I don't remember is whether or not we had these little connectors or not. So these are meant specifically for the horse. It's been a little while since I messed with a horse, so I don't really remember. So you've got these little clasps, and then you can put them, you know, back here. It kind of covers up some of the meat and the bones on them if you want. If you want to leave them exposed, obviously you can do that. I tend to forget about the shields and then never put them back on, so it probably won't stay on there too much longer. But Conabus is pretty terrific. Again, you know, if you want to get him naked, you can do that. He does have a decent amount of articulation, surprising amount of articulation for what this thing is in terms of how it's put together and the lack of a lot of quote-unquote meat, plastic on him, obviously. But I think this is a really, really tremendous looking and moving horse. And then here's the big man, well, on the horse. And honestly, I think he fits on this thing incredibly well. Specifically, as you can see, I've got the wings off of him. I feel like he is better suited to being on the horse without the wings, just because, well, what's he need the wings for if he's going to be riding a horse? But you can do whatever you want with him. I do think he looks really cool like this. The lack of like an actual armored codpiece, like a lot of figures have, that hangs down at the waist, really does help him to sit on this unencumbered. His belt doesn't really get in the way. The soft goods tabard really just, you know, pushes itself out of the way. He sits on it just fine. And you've got him there, and he's ready to go. I think he looks just terrific on Conabus. This is easily my favorite Horseman horse combo by far. Not to mention the fact that I think this is still probably my favorite horse. Just, I mean, skeleton horse. You can't really get much cooler than that. But the combination of both of these two together just works. It works. So yeah, overall, this is, well, it's good. It's really good. And I know that's not really that surprising. It's Legions, it's the Horsemen, but there was a lot kind of riding on this one, right? This literally, I think, is the longest I've waited for any action figure ever, I think, right? It's been since November of 2022. It's been what feels like an absolute lifetime, and they absolutely delivered on this figure. Not only does he have an incredible shelf presence, he is everything you want in a skeletal god figure on top of a skeletal horse. I really don't know how much more they could have done to make this guy better. The detail is just oozing out of every inch of this figure. Both of these figures, I should say. Necronominus is obviously the true focus here, but Conabus is equally as impressive just because of the engineering and how different this is from the other horses, but they make for an incredible pairing. Necronominus on his own is amazing. If you just want a skeletal horse, Conabus is also great. ultimately, I really don't think you could go wrong with either of them in any way here. So that's going to do it for this look at the Mythic Legions Necronominus Wave, Necronominus, and Conabus. Let me know what you guys think. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and share, and until next time.